Right, okay, welcome back to Norwich Talk for another transfer speculation video. This time we're going to be talking about Dennis Mann. I'm sure you recognise that name because he's been touted with Norwich quite loudly in the media. A very exciting player. I think he's labelled as one of Europe's most exciting players, which is nice to see Norwich being ambitious. However, I'm not actually too sure if this one will happen. I'll say now because I believe his asking price is between £8 and £10 million, which I think is half of what Norwich City will spend in this transfer window. Because obviously we know this is a massive transfer window for Norwich. And I think the finances on Norwich's behalf are looking a little bit better than what they have done over the past 3 years. So I think we'll see Norwich splash a little bit more of the cash. However, I don't know if we'll do it on, I don't think we'll spend half of it on one player, but he's worth talking about. This video, as the other videos are in terms of transfer speculation videos, is just me informing you a little bit more, so you've not got to go out and sort of do a bunch of reading. I'm going to tell you everything we know about him so far from websites, a little bit of watching his YouTube videos, because I know it's nice to watch a player's YouTube clips and a highlights reel, but at the same time, you can't sort of judge a player off that because that them videos are made to show all the qualities rather than sort of the player as a whole. But yeah, Dennis Mann, very exciting player. Very, very exciting player. He's 21 years old. He's Romanian. He is 22 on the 26th of August, so he'll be 22 soon. He's Romanian, as I said. He's playing in Liga 1, I believe it's called, which is the Romanian first tier. He's playing for FCSB, which I thought stood for something, but I don't think it actually does. And if it does, I don't want to say it because I don't want to offend anyone, which I think is probably just for the best. He's a right winger, so on my notes here, I've got in brackets a Buendia replacement, which I definitely think he would be. He's played in the first tier for 4 years now, which a bit like Jacob Sorensen, he's been playing from a very young age, which is very exciting, very interesting as well, very key to a player's development. I think the earlier you can get a sniff of senior football or first team football, the better. As I said in that video, you sort of choose a direction to go, you then kick on like a player like Max Aarons and Jamal Lewis have done, and Ben Godfrey as well, or you sort of maybe regress a little bit, take a step back, and then focus on your development as an individual, which we know Norwich City are good at. You look at Todd Cantwell. He played for Norwich City a little bit, and then I don't know if he played for the first team or not, but he went on loan to Holland, and that's a sort of a similar thing that other young players have done and will do for Norwich City in the future, no doubt, with this model that Stuart Webber has set up. And then you come back and you progress, or you leave the club. There's always that option. But another interesting thing, he's been involved in 43 goals in 95 appearances, and when I say involved, I mean goals and assists, and these are senior, I think, first team appearances in the top tier, which is interesting. He's played a lot more games than that, of course, but this is just in the Romanian Premier League. He's got 27 goals and 16 assists, which is pretty good for a winger because you don't often actually look to a winger for goal scoring, and 27 goals is decent. I think 16 assists is also decent for a young player. Obviously, if he came to Norwich, you'd expect a little bit more in terms of assists. You look at Buendia last season and this season. The assists are key, obviously, to creating goals, which is quite obvious. But nonetheless, I think he's almost got a 1 in 2 directly involved in a goal, which is massive and is very important to the way Norwich City play, because obviously we don't really focus on defence. It's more about just outscoring the opposition. However, in this transfer window, we could see some other centre-backs brought in, which I'd like to see. I'm pretty sure we'd all like to see that in terms of this idea of improving our defence and maybe sort of shoring up that area of the game a little bit more. That's how Norwich would have stayed in the Premier League this season, by having a surer defence, or a defence that just fancies jumping for a cross. West Ham was still very recent at this point, so I'm still a bit salty in terms of crossing. Again, much like Danel Sinani, he's got Europa League and Champions League qualifying experience, which is invaluable for a young player because that's a very different stage. It's a very different atmosphere in terms of the football on the pitch. There's different stakes, which is interesting. I think Champions League games are less performance-based, of course. I think any sort of knockout cup is less performance-based and results-based. And now, if you can get the performance maxed or sort of perfectly mixed with sort of the desire for a result, that is then your perfect blend of a player. But I think that the Champions League, the Europa League, sort of wages different propositions, and you learn different things from. So in the league, it's more performance based, isn't it? Unless you're going for a title, and then in the European competitions, it is very much results based, which I think improves character within a player, sort of improves and develops the drive within a player to actually win a game. Perhaps them games require a bit more urgency, which is something that was called for by Norwich City fans from this team that were trying to stay in the Premier League. A bit more urgency. He also won all the, I think it was Europa League qualifying games that he played in for this season, which is good. It's good to have a winning mentality, isn't it? But yeah, that is everything I know about him directly. I've seen some clips. Now, he looks like a player with a lot of flair. I think in terms of this idea that he's an Emi Buendia replacement, I think he would be in terms of position. I think he's a slightly different player in terms of the fact that I think he relies a bit more on pace, which is it's never a bad thing. You look at Onel Hernandez, he's very sort of pace-driven, literally. And also, he looks like he's got a good finish on him now. I think that's where he could maybe leapfrog Emi Buendia. Now, it's a bold statement, but he possibly could in terms of this fact that Buendia's finishing, or shooting, or ability to shoot. I don't really know what it was, but his goal scoring wasn't very good in the Premier League season. So far, we've not played the following game after West Ham yet. And Emi Buendia has scored one goal, and that was against Watford recently. So hopefully Dennis Mann, if he was to join Norwich City, would be able to score a few more goals, chip in within a few more, which would be very helpful to the team and sort of release the pressure from some of the players' shoulders, wouldn't it? Which is why we got promoted to the Premier League in the first place. The goals were shared around the pitch, and they obviously haven't been in this Premier League season, which is why we've been relegated and not scored as many as Norwich fans were expecting and hoping. But I think expecting is the key word there, to be honest with you. But yeah. An interesting thing as well is that he did miss a month at the beginning of this season due to injury. Now, I know a lot of these players at Norwich City sign. You look at Vrancic, Tribal, I would say Zimmerman, I suppose Tim Closer, although we've not signed him under the Webber era, Sam Byram as well, Moritz Leitner. They've all sort of tinkered with injury, which is why they've come to Norwich. These players have always tinkered with injury in terms of having their career halted, and then they get brought to Norwich to sort of revitalise themselves. So hopefully injury is not an issue, because now when I look at players, when I do my research for these transfer videos, I do look at the injury history, because as I said a minute ago, a lot of the players that join Norwich City have lost their way for various reasons, and one of them is often injury. So hopefully, if he was to join Norwich, he wouldn't be sort of injury prone and have his career halted by injury, because that's always such a tragedy in football, I think. You look at players like Jack Wilshere, who's so wonderfully gifted, and their careers are halted by injury. Daniel Sturridge as well, just sort of you fall off the horse because of injury, which is so sad, because as a footballer you should be judged on your footballing ability rather than sort of your injury history and the fact that you can't go 90 minutes or play a full 90 minutes, which is a real tragedy. But yeah, I think that's the way to view Dennis Mann. Very pacey, of course. I think he'd be the Emi Buendia replacement, and if Norwich were to sign him, it would be a real statement of intent, because he would cost Norwich a lot of money, by our standards, of course. But yeah, it'll be an interesting one. I do hope we sign him, because I love to see attacking players join the club, because you often see them feature, and if he's a good player, he'll be good to watch. He'll bring something new to Norwich City, which hopefully is a blend of Onel Hernandez and Emi Buendia. But, this is it's dream talk at this point. I don't know if he'll join for Norwich, because I think the transfer fee will be a little bit too much. However, we've seen his name touted a bit, so I thought I'd inform you of him a bit more, and we'd get a bit more of an idea as to what Norwich City could be signing, might be signing, hopefully will be signing at some point in the near future. But yeah, that is just about everything for my views on Dennis Mann. Make sure you let me know your thoughts on Dennis Mann in the comments down below. As I said in the Jacob Sorensen video, what do you expect from him if he was to sign from Norwich City? Would you expect an instant impact? Would you forgive age in terms of a slower development or a lengthier development, whatever you want to call it? But yeah, as I said, that's just about everything, and until next time, we'll see you again very, very soon.